Hey everybody, and welcome to my N5 series on the SP404 Mark II, where I cover a topic in about 5 minutes. A Quiet Garden wrote in saying, can you advise me on good practice regarding SD cards in the SP404 Mark II? Yeah. I know you say you got a 128 gigabyte card. Honestly, this is just personal preference, but I mean, I've got the 32 gig card, and it's a lot of space to be able to save samples. I know it's super easy to just go to archive.org and go download just a ridiculous amount of samples, songs, and other things. But I think for most people's workflow, I would start by saying it's not worth it and necessary to go overboard, only because you're just going to drown yourself in samples. And I think it's worth having some sort of a filter to make yourself go through these sample packs or whatever you're buying and be selective about what you do and do not like. But let's just get into it. So a couple of things to know. As long as you're not writing or reading any data from the SD card, it seems like the SP404 Mark II does a great job mounting and unmounting it just mounts it for as long as it needs it and then unmounts the card. So I think when you have like this kind of a view where you can see your BPM view or other stuff, it's not a problem to insert and remove your SD card. I would also say, just as a other quick note, if you don't know, there is a little switch on the side. If you're curious about what this does, if it's down, hopefully you can see this in the video, but if it's down, it is locked so that you can't write anything to it. You can read. So if you're concerned about the data on your card, definitely consider using the lock button. I haven't felt like this slot is weak in any way either. So I don't know that there's a certain amount of times that you can put the card in and take it out. I wouldn't go crazy. And if it feels like something's not resting in there quite right, I wouldn't jam it in, because it's spring loaded and has some other mechanics in there that you could certainly damage, but I haven't had to worry about it too much. Anyway, a few notes as we get into this. I'm going to go into the Shift Pad 14. I'm just going to go to import from SD and just kind of show you a few things. But if you go sample, you can kind of see whoops, it does start auto playing. I tend to not put sounds too much in the root drive, but you can see here I've got a couple. These were just some tests I was running for, I think, one of the streams. Anyway, I tend to try and do just a documentation directory. Like, this is just where I'm putting like the guide I've been working on and the manual, in case I just need to remember real quick, like, where the heck was this? And 32 gigs has plenty of space, so I just usually have like some of those docs on here, even though they're also on my computer. The backup is the BKUP is the directory where it's going to actually back up content. And you can see this is just numerically, I think it goes from 1 to 99, so you should have plenty of space here. Although if you really load up your SP404 Mark II, you might need more for backups. But I mean, I just basically do the backups if I'm going to do something destructive, but they do take a while to load. Export, if you go into this directory, you're going to have project and sample. Sample is where it's going to write out any of the samples, and it's just basically 1 through 10, which is the bank for the first part, the dash, and then it's going to be 0, 1 through 16, which is the pad number. So you got bank and pad number. If you export, it's just going to overwrite whatever you have there. So just be warned that it's pretty easy to go through and overwrite stuff. You can see I've got some like named things in here. This is because I went through and renamed some of the things for work I was doing, but I personally tend to try and keep the sample directory fairly empty. And projects are just going to be 1 through 16 for whatever projects that you have that you're exporting. And again, it's going to, if you export from a different backup or other thing, it's going to overwrite your project. So just be warned that if you have pre-existing projects that you don't want to overwrite, you may make sure you want to copy these off to your computer and do something with them. From there, you can see I've got like this make2 test. For me, I've just tried doing like different tests and got a few different directories here where I've loaded up and prepared samples. You probably don't need that yourself. Outline, that's actually the outline image, I think, that's on here, just in case I ever wanted to make like a face plate or something. I thought about it a few times, had a couple ideas for designs, just never did it. sample packs. These are just things that I've downloaded from the internet that I thought might be interesting to put on here and play with. And you can see I've just kind of got each directory that is named, which is fine. Can't really do much with these MIDI files. I've left them there. Some of these directories also have info that might have legal or other information, but you can see like the wave loops. It's kind of sorted in the way that it's here. And again, you can kind of just highlight and play whatever you want. A note, you cannot have more than 255 files in a directory. I'll have to do a few more tests, but it's definitely, you can't have more than 255 wave files. It just starts ignoring anything after that. I'm going to have to do some tests in the future just to go play around with it, see if I can document the behavior a little bit better. And let's see, besides that, just tracks. This is just things that I've like, when I go into DJ mode or something, when I've been playing around with that, if I've got tracks that I want to load up onto pads, I just kind of have a track directory. It's not very well sorted. If you have different things that you're trying to do, I would say certainly go through and go about managing that better. Like if you have specific tracks that you want to use in DJ mode that are like drum and bass versus like hip hop or whatever. But I don't know, it's pretty much just how I've been kind of working with the SD card myself and trying to keep it at least a little bit organized. So yeah, I mean, as far as I know, this supports up to a 1 terabyte drive. That's an awful lot of samples, and there's probably no way you'll ever go through all of them. And I don't know that there's a reason to have that much storage on there. I mean, I actually have a 2 terabyte on my MPC here, so I wouldn't, you do what you want. I certainly have mine loaded up fairly well with samples, but on the MPC, I find, because it can go through that full directory, it's a lot easier to kind of work through. And I have a different system for how I kind of manage samples over here. On the SP404 Mark II, though, it's a little bit more basic. You can't really, you have to use a computer to do a lot of that management. So I try and keep it as simple as possible. The last thing I just want to mention is I do have a firmware directory here. This is where I keep all the different firmwares that I have on the system. And the reason why I do this is in case I ever need to downgrade, I have access to them. I don't have every single one. Someday maybe I'll try and go get them all, or maybe I'll find some other ones on my computer that I had. But if you want to do that, you can see the file names are, you can't see it on here because it's not displaying them. It's basically like 2 different bin files. They have the exact same name no matter what the firmware is. They have to be in the root directory when you want to do your upgrade install. So I've just kind of kept them so I know what firmware is what, in case I need to go back and copy them back to the root directory and do that. Otherwise, yeah, this is kind of how I got things set up. Hope that helps. Keep making music, keep having fun. Remember, if it sounds good, it is good. And peace.